This is WPSL Port St. Lucie, the talk of the Treasure Coast.
It's 10:07 at WPSL 1590, the talk of the Treasure Coast, and you're on Ask a Rabbi.
And this is Rabbi Shafir Lobb of Congregation Eitz, Chayim, your Jewish home on the Treasure Coast. And it is one of those sweltering Fridays, but listening to it, it's sweltering just about everywhere.
Oh, yeah, no doubt about it. Yeah, yesterday was an adventure for WPSL.
Oh, yeah?
We had 2 of the 3 legs of our power for the transmitter blown up.
Ooh.
Literally, yesterday afternoon. I have never in my life, in the 30 years that I've been here, seen lightning like there was on US 1 in that area. The signal is going crazy, and I'm thinking, what in the world? And come to find out, I walked into the transmitter room, and the battery backup was on, transmitter's going crazy. There's 8 power drawers, and only 1 was working. Wow. And I thought, we must have taken a direct hit. Well, it wasn't us, but it was FPL.
Okay.
And next door. And, you
just got the fallout.
2 of our 3 legs of the power were out, and we got it back at 6:30. So,
wow.
Yeah, it was scary though.
People who don't understand electricity are missing out on a lot of information.
Is that what you call it?
I'm trying to. Okay. So what I'm thinking about, I listened to Swap Shop on my way into the studio, not surprisingly, and thank you for the great plug. Heard that. And good luck on the promotion, giving away tickets. See, I did hear it all.
Oh, yeah.
And those are all good things.
Yep.
Right. But as you come down 39th on the way to the studio, the wires are so dirty. You cannot hear it.
Fort Pierce Utilities. You gotta love it.
My
it's
gosh.
Awful.
The whole way from Orange
up brutal.
Yeah, to Metzger is just.
Yep, and I've talked to both FPL and Fort Pierce Utility. Of course, they couldn't care less because it's hurricane season. So forget about that.
It's been a long time.
Yeah.
My thought is that this is just one of the older, forgotten neighborhoods that lives along there.
Yeah, I'm not going to take that any further.
Yeah, I understand.
It is forgotten, and
yeah, it's clearly forgotten.
The whole northwest section. So now, Fort Pierce is.
I have to tell you, we have. The transformer out in front of my house is sitting there going, you can hear it when you go outside.
Ooh.
And at night you can see the spark. And I reported it months ago.
How many months ago?
Almost going double digit.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
And I'm just waiting, I'm hoping it doesn't take out the car or the house on its way out. I don't know how long it can go sit there and go before it does something more dramatic.
Cliff and I were standing outside this building, and that gigantic can that's on the pole out there. That thing got blown to smithereens one day, and it was literally just hanging there. And needless to say, the building didn't have any power, and we were on generator at the time. So it was, oh my gosh!
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Mother Nature.
Yeah.
Lightning is a scary proposition.
Oh, yeah. And you can just imagine what it must have been like to be out in the fields with the sheep. Right? And see lightning. That had to be, it's not surprising animals get scared.
Oh, no. I can imagine.
Okay, so this is almost too funny. I have to, hold on a second. Hello?
Somebody.
What was that? Okay, thank you. You are live on my radio show, love. I technology. Talk to you soon. Love you.
Oh.
Yeah, it's a case of he knows I have a radio show, so he knows it starts at 10:05. Gotta love it.
Oh, yes.
It's focus on an issue, so got it.
There you go.
Get it, got it good.
Go sign it up.
Technology, yeah. There are not many phone calls that I would take on a radio show. My other half is one of them. So
there you go. Well, but if you have a question for the Rabbi, 340-1590, give us a call.
That phone call I will take, but it's got to come through the radio station, not through my phone.
There you go.
So, 772-340-1590.
So how was your week?
My week was, in some ways, a little bit quieter than previous weeks. And thank you for the plug on the teaching and all of that. I do that, and I'm also working on licensure as a counselor. And right now I'm trying to find a spot that wants me to come in and do some practicum hours. So working on that.
There you go.
Yeah. I'm at that stage, which means that in another year I'll have the license, God willing.
Year?
Yeah. Year and a few months.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Working through it.
That's, oh my. Okay. Yeah. I get it.
Yeah.
I get it.
So, and I've got a question in. If we've got any licensed counselors or family therapists on listening in, if you'd let me know if I can get dual licensure if I take the extra classes, I'd love that information too.
All right, yeah.
That's a question that I'm looking to get answered.
Cool, and you can call her right now on her cell phone. Oh,
no,
kidding.
not on the cell phone, please, on the station. On the other hand, if you'd like to sponsor one of these crazy shows,
sure,
where we answer any questions you might call with as best we can. I don't have all the answers, and I'll tell you when I don't. And that's at 772-340-1590.
Okay, you are a consummate learner. Are you actually going to take even more courses after you get this other degree that you're working for?
Well, if it turns out that I can get double licensure, I'd like to do that.
So when is that? How long does that
take?
Well,
that's only 3 courses.
Oh,
there's only
okay.
3. The 2 types of counselors take almost identical courses. There's only 3 specialty courses that separate you out as an individual counselor or a group therapy counselor versus a marriage and family. There's more training on family dynamics. And of course, you have to do, and I would do that anyway, split your practicum and intern hours so that you cover enough of both. And it wouldn't bother me to get extra hours on that.
So you're going the family counseling route.
Well, right now I'm going the individual counseling.
Individual
but
counseling.
you can still work with couples. Certainly.
Well, could you go to like a Hanley drug treatment area?
Yeah, you can do
and
addiction.
stuff like that?
Addiction's one of the things you have to, both tracks you have to take addiction. Florida requires human sexuality, which not every state has slightly different rules as to what they require or don't require, which is an interesting piece. It's not like a medical degree. It has not yet gotten standardized enough that it's portable from state to state.
I wonder why.
In part, I think it's because it's just now coming on stream with heavy licensing, with more requirements for licensing. If I had done what I'm doing a decade or 2 ago, it'd have been different. And then you're grandfathered in, of course. But there's an effort to improve the service given to people and to standardize the training that leads to it, to try to make it better.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that's a bad idea.
No, I think that's a good idea.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how are your students doing this week?
My students are doing well. All of them. We're about halfway through the summer B at IRSC.
Wow.
Well, it only goes 6 weeks, so it's quick.
Yeah.
And my students at Kaiser are This is also their midpoint because their terms are 1 month, and that's an interesting way to do studies, and it works for a lot of people. You take one course or two if you're doubling, and you can only double if you're doing a good job on your grades, and you can only do it once per 4 classes. So typically a student will take one class for a month, and then one class, and then one class, and then one class, and finish out the semester that way. So
Wow.
it's an intense way to do it. And students will say to me, "Oh, there's so much reading." It's like, yeah, but you're only reading for one class. So
Somebody asked me, I think or Publix or somewhere, if you actually spoke Chinese
no.
to your students in China.
A handful of words.
Okay.
A very small handful. So, for example, Chinyang Kwai Lun is Happy New Year. I can say that. There were a few more words that I could recognize, but I didn't know the syntax on how to use them properly, so better not to.
Yeah, right. No, that's
before I
very
tell them
smart.
to go plant a tree on something, or something weird. And because my ear is not trained, over the time that I taught English, it got better because, of course, the students didn't so much use Chinese because the program was English immersion. So one of the rules was speaking English, and they had to. You used a lot of puppets and what they call realia, things to show what you meant, and so you taught language that way, much the way that a young child would learn language when they're first learning. And the piece that I'm going to say envious. I wish American parents did this with their kids. Was that the Chinese started their kids very young learning English, and so they were learning English at a time when their language center is open and at high speed. And so kids pick it up like you'd pick up a box of toys. It's real easy.
Well, like with Carol, when she was in the Indiana University Lab School, by the 4th grade, she was speaking 4 languages.
Yeah.
It was, I just say,
Yeah.
holy smokes.
And kids grow up that way all over the world.
Yes, they do.
We
they do.
don't do it. We don't do it enough, and it is my soapbox. There's a couple of really serious benefits to learning to speak more than one language. When somebody only knows one language, they're much more likely to be what I would call black and white or hot and cold, that something is either one or the other, and there's nothing in between. And that's not reality. The reality is that not everything's hot and not everything's cold. Things are sometimes warm or cool or neutral. And when you speak more than one language, there aren't any two languages. There are not any two languages on the planet that a person can word for word translate to another language. It just doesn't work.
Really? Huh.
And there's 2 reasons for that. One is that vocabulary is not matched one for one.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So, for example, if you were going to translate "there's snow on the mountain" into an indigenous Inuit language, they're going to ask, what kind of snow? What do I call that? Because they've got so many different words for snow, because in their life it matters. Whereas here in Florida we go, what's snow? But
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
although there was hail not that long ago.
Oh, yeah. Oh, sure.
Like last weekend, I think.
I was going to say, yeah, yeah.
I vaguely remember the husband saying, "Yeah, there's hail out there." He went and checked. I didn't. But we were standing somewhere, and it was an interesting moment. Anyway, so that kind of thing. And the example that I like to give is if I tell you Jim is sharp, how do you translate that? Which of the many meanings of sharp In another language, there's not going to be a word for sharp that carries all those meanings that we assign to that word. So you can't just go from one to the other. And you start to realize that context and subtlety is very important.
And we have so many words that sound the same that are totally different. You know,
Like READ and RED?
Oh.
Or REED?
Yes.
Right? Or there's that great, and I show this to students when we study language, that piece where Lucy's trying to have Ricky read a book to their future child.
Oh, no.
Right?
Ricky
And it's got
Ricardo.
OUGH. Yeah. You know, and, you know, it starts out with he cut off some boughs from the tree, and he mispronounces it, so she corrects him. And then he says, and then he was through. No, he was through. You know, and so they go through, and then he coughed, right? So it's all the different OUGHs that they put into this little book.
Every once in a while on Facebook, you'll see an I Love Lucy episode go through there, and I just laugh. Simpler times, I guess, but my goodness, those comedians were so funny and no dirt. You know, it was all clean fun.
I think the Lucy show, for the most part, that's true. Some of the shows not so clean. Some of the early Disney stuff is horrendous.
I know you've said that in the past.
Yeah. There's even some old pieces that they've rewritten. Because there was one show where they actually had a crow by the name of Jim.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah.
No.
Oh, yeah.
Are you kidding?
Yeah.
Oh.
I'm not kidding.
Oh.
So there is some really horrible stereotyping going on, and you don't even want to know about Mickey in Africa.
No.
That was just, the stereotyping is horrible. They did two pieces, Mickey in Africa and Mickey in Arabia. Neither of those is anything approaching good.
Oh, gosh.
And why is that important? Because adults today were kids then.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And that stuff gets in at a really primal level. One of the things that happens with human beings is that the first thing we hear is more important than what we hear later. It takes on a primacy role. And so if we hear that trees are red, then we're going to judge future statements against that one if that's the first thing we hear. Until we learn to question. And again, that comes back to language. Language might add some subtlety that makes you go, maybe not. It makes you question things in a healthy way. So, yeah. It's important. Okay, so this is almost funny. I'm getting another phone call from a photographer who's going to come take some pictures. I love the phone.
Yeah, yesterday, it's, you know, of course, Cliff is controlling, I don't know, 4 or 5 cameras. And we had a young camera guy in here for the real estate show, and he brought in 4 or 5. And I'm sitting there going, oh, my goodness. Yeah, it was amazing. Just amazing. But he's using an HD system through his phone.
Yeah, you can.
And, you know, those crazy iPhones now.
They take incredible photos.
They're better than our old television cameras
Oh my gosh.
in L.A.
I think it takes as good a picture as my old Nikons that I had to print on film.
Film, I've heard of that.
Yeah, something. Remember that? old, really necessary skill. Close your eyes and load the film canister.
Oh, God. Yes. Loading the film magazines in the dark.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
been there, done that. Oh,
and the
it's
thing
terrible.
that I love about that is that if you ask somebody in the darkroom where there are no lights, are your eyes open or closed when you're loading it? And most people will close their eyes.
I did.
Most people
I don't
do.
know why.
Because
that's interesting. I never
because
thought
you
of that.
learned to do it with the eyes closed. And so
How about
the way you learn something has an influence on what you learn. So there are people who would have trouble in the dark with their eyes open loading the canister.
You know, at Channel 4 in Tucson, we had every car, news car, had a dark
Box.
well, not really. We couldn't afford that. Had
Oh,
a
okay.
dark coat, and we used to stick the film magazines in the
Inside,
coat,
yeah.
and just load it in the back seat of a car if we were going somewhere.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. That really goes back. That was early 70s.
Light effects on film, and I've seen plenty of
Oh.
films ruined.
Spotted. Yeah.
Spotted, blurry, weird things that happen on it. But hey, if you do it right, you can make it. Never mind.
There used to be in Tucson, I think he was on Campbell, only one processor, and there were three television stations, and we almost have head-on collisions
Getting into his lot.
coming into his lot, and see which one gets in there first and gets on the film run first. Oh gosh, those were crazy days.
Yeah. And
Crazy.
that crazy time limit. And,
Oh yeah.
yeah.
You
And that's
bet.
why you'd often have film at 11.
That's
That
true.
famous line.
You bet.
Film at 11.
Oh my.
People don't understand that now. 'Cause
No,
now,
no.
You have it on the phone, and in 30 seconds, it's at the station and it's ready to run.
Sure.
If that long.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. And with streaming possibilities now, it's like it can all be instantaneous.
Yeah. Well, and we get much more immediate information about things. We get many more views of things, and it's a different experience than it was when you were younger.
Yes. Well, you wonder, thinking back to going to Elton John and Michael Jackson, people like that, and of course, no pictures.
Yeah.
Well, everybody's got that now.
Yeah.
I wonder how the concert venues handle it.
What, the no pictures?
Well, because everybody can shoot pictures with a phone.
And people do. They've got monitors who watch to see if your phone comes on. They do the same thing at
Jeez.
McAlpin. You're not allowed to video. I mean, people do, and they're usually nice about it. But it is distracting to bring that up, particularly if the flash goes off. It's really
It's brutal. Yeah.
It's not nice to the people on stage, but it's also not nice to the people right behind you, because the typical scenario is raise the hand to get the good shot, and then and if you're short like I am, that's really a problem if the person in front of me does it.
Sure.
I see nothing.
Well, but the problem that music rights people would have is all these people getting free music in the concert area and recording it.
Yeah. And it happens.
Yeah,
Huge
all
happens.
the time now.
Music is even harder, right? Because music you can record without having it. Now it's fuzzier. The phone is not as good a voice recorder as the high fidelity equipment.
They'll get to that.
It'll get better and better, but
Yes, it will.
um,
Just as the cameras have on the
Yeah.
phones. Yeah.
yeah, and it's funny because I was thinking, I have so many shots that I've heard so much back from people about with my flower photography.
Oh, you had one yesterday that was ridiculous. It was so beautiful.
I don't even remember what
Purple and white. And
something.
yeah, it was gorgeous. Just gorgeous.
So I was thinking, I think I'm gonna mount those somewhere, and got to figure out how to do that. But instead of, because right now I actually have print photos that I have sold of some of the pieces that I do. But I'm gonna go digital and make my life easier. That was my aha this morning.
There you go.
I'm gonna connect with one of those companies because they'll sell a lot more than I will.
You bet. Oh, yeah.
And some passive income there, folks.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're a tremendous photographer.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I've always loved it. I started black and white in college. one of my jobs as a student was with a photographer.
Student newspaper.
Well, the student newspaper, of course, had, obviously, we took photos for that, and I did those. And the college had a contract with a photographer in town to do the black and whites, and with that, I got a job with him. And I worked in the darkroom, and I learned airbrushing and all those other little things of the old ways of fixing photos. Till Photoshop.
The original Photoshop.
The original, yeah. The original. That's why they call it airbrushing, folks. It actually used an airbrush.
You mean Raquel Welch's pictures were airbrushed? Oh.
They've gotten increasingly touched, but yeah, you look at the old pictures of Marilyn Monroe and I wonder what she would have looked like if somebody had been doing that on Photoshop now. She'd probably not have looked human. But then we have humans trying to imitate that, who clearly take themselves beyond what's reasonable in an attempt to look like the caricatures that are created on the computer.
You talk about that. The AI thing is real scary, especially when they start talking about images and it's crazy.
I actually used them to generate an image, and it was quite good. I was surprised.
Really?
Because I'm looking for simple images, so that's not hard. And they're gonna know what they can and cannot use. So I used it more to not have to worry about copyright than because they're not going to use something you can't use. Their search engine won't allow them to get onto it, which is interesting because they're not going to pay the royalty, so they're not going to use it.
Yeah.
So it saves for that kind of thing. It was just something I wanted for a slide that I was using. I wanted a certain kind of picture, and it was easy. I admit that. And but the key is I put that on the credit. It's photo by or art by AI.
There you go. Okay.
And I noticed yesterday I was helping a doctoral student who one of the colleges that the university that he goes to requires that he create a journal article and submit it before he can get his dissertation published, which is interesting. Because one of the things that it said on the submission site was, if we can't get to your dissertation on which this is based, we will reject your article. And I'm like, this is a catch-22. Can't get one published without the other. So I said to him, put a letter in saying that it's here and that the university has it and that you'll send them the URL as soon as it's listed. It's one of those things you have to work with it. People have got to look at things.
How long is like a dissertation?
The average dissertation that I've worked on is anywhere from about 170 to 230 pages.
Wow.
Double spaced. So if you figure that's about 250 to 300 words per page, that's a good chunk of writing.
Oh, yeah.
Usually broken up into 5 chapters. There's a couple of universities that do a 4-chapter format where it's actually just combining stuff. Making it 5 is a little cleaner because you know what's where. And but in this particular case, as I was looking through the submission, I noticed that there's a big bolded, if AI was used to generate this article, it must be acknowledged.
Ooh.
Yeah. And that AI can only be used if you used it as a starting point and then revised it.
Wow.
Which I think, that's the way to use AI.
Now, is that a large university that had those rules?
That was a Science Direct, which is one of the major publishers of scientific articles. And his was an engineering PhD.
Okay.
So, yeah, I work on crazy things.
You still can't get away from that engineering, can you?
No, I can't.
That's in your blood. Well, it's in your blood. I mean,
so it's an interesting study that he's done, and I'm not going to say more about that because I actually can't. He's got government pieces on it. So the AI is good, but it is not right at the caliber of a good writer.
Mm-hmm.
It writes at a mediocre level, even when you ask it to get formal. And I've played with it. I've got the all the settings, and I've tried to see what I can get it to do. And I have yet to get it to write something that I would consider much higher than high school. But it's great if you ask it, what are the points I should cover on subject XYZ? It's going to give you a list of points to cover, and that is good for organizing. If you use that as your starting point, that's a great use of the tool. It's a tool. It's there. And it's like every other tool. If all you do is hit everything with a hammer, it's going to look like it's hammered. I can tell, for the most part, when a student is using it because it has its own language. Because the algorithm is not creative. It has its own style. It has its rules. It's always going to have this header that's 2 to 3 sentences. It's going to give you a bunch of bullet points, and then it's going to give you something that's going to say in conclusion or in summary or remember. It's got a couple of key phrases that it uses. And to the student who just copies it and puts it in their assignment, it is like a fingerprint, folks. It is so obvious. And I think that's what the checkers that are being used now use. And again, if it's a tool and you use it and then make it your own, then it's your own. You still should credit that it was used to generate part of the information.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And I don't see personally a problem with that. That's a tool. There's things like Grammarly that check your grammar. There's spell checkers. And those, again, are tools. They're not doing the actual writing for you. They might help you. They'll improve it, but they're not doing the writing. And here's a big piece, because, again, I've played in it because I want to know what students are doing. And if you ask Grammarly to fix what AI writes, because they don't agree, by the way, and as soon as you pop it in, Grammarly will come up and say, error, error, because it's not happy with some of the things in the algorithm, which is humorous to me. But if you do that...
One algorithm fighting another.
Yeah. It really is. And so if you ask Grammarly to rewrite it, it still keeps it at that same low level. It doesn't notch it up. The only way you're going to get it to academic, scholarly level is by using the gray matter between your ears. And if you're doing anything else, it is cheating. It is. There are tools that will help, but there has to be a piece that comes from you that's your voice. And I get it. I mean, 1 in 4 students today is either an immigrant or the child of an immigrant. That's how big our immigration is, not overall, but with young children. Americans are not making enough kids on our own.
Well, and you have said that about the Eastern European bloc for a long time.
Yeah. Well, it's developed
Japan.
countries. Developed countries tend not to have enough kids. Partially because parents go, wait a minute, if I've got to pay for this fetus through college, that's a ton of money. And it's a time of, kids are life-changing. There are all kinds of concerns with having a child in the house that you don't have when we used to call them dinks, right? Double income, no kids. And it's a different lifestyle. And people are electing to not go into the 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 kid level. Right? The average. We do not even replace the people who die without immigration, which is important. We want the country to continue to function. We've always been a land of immigrants. Most of them voluntarily, some not. But we've always been a land of people who've come in. Even the indigenous people, right? The Indians came into the land. Life didn't start in the Americas.
Yeah, I've always been fascinated about the Aleutian Eskimos, wondering did they come over from Russia or what was their ancestry like, you know?
Well, now that we have DNA, yeah, there's a connection. All of the people up in the top part of the planet share DNA to some level. And by doing DNA studies, they can track the migration down into North, Central, and South America. But, you know, these folks have been here a good long time, long before Columbus sailed the ocean blue and destroyed the population of Hispaniola and other places. Another unpretty chapter.
Yeah.
And as I was talking with people, with some of my students this week, it's not that our history, we all have ugly, ugly parts in our history. No matter what identity you go with, there's ugly stuff out there in that history. And we just need to own that and acknowledge it, learn from it, and not repeat it. Because if you pretend it's not there, you're going to repeat it. That's the bottom line. It's not the function of history, the function of the past is to provide lessons for the future. That's what it's there for, so that you don't make the same mistake more than once or twice more. So Germany went out of its way after the Holocaust to put in laws and regulations to prevent the kind of thing that happened. But we haven't migrated that to the whole planet yet. There are still genocides going on. There's still ethnic cleansing going on. We don't have to look far. Just open up the news and you'll hear about some of them, but there's many more that you don't hear about. That are just, they don't involve white Christians, so we don't hear about them. And to me, that's tragic. We've got the age of the phone. We know what's going on. Or we can know. It's willful ignorance to not know. And the only thing that bullies need is ignorance or silence. When somebody says, oh, I'm neutral, and one of the individuals in the conflict is a bully, you are siding with the bully, because the only thing they need is for the bystanders to do nothing.
Well, and
they will take that as tacit approval. Sorry.
I mean, my concern is of not knowing, I guess, if you will, is the demise of the newspapers. And, you know, they used to joke, the LA Times guys used to get all over us all the time, you know. You guys are the hamburger in television, we're the meat. And they're right. I mean, you know, it just... And the death of the newspapers is horrific.
Okay.
I think.
It's not a death of newspapers. It's a transformation. It's a death of newsprint. It's the death of slicing up little trees and throwing them on front lawns.
Yes.
Okay. But CNN started out as a print news media and migrated successfully, very successfully, onto internet and TV. TV, when it first came out, was heralded as the death of the newspaper. Because,
death of radio. Oh, yeah.
News
I remember that.
But we still have radio. News Radio 14 as one that I worked with, and right, obviously the talk of the Treasure Coast. So there's still a need for it, and as you pointed out on Swap Shop, TuneIn is on
it's absurd.
The new apps. So it's not the death, but it will be if the media doesn't make the transition to new formats.
Mm-hmm.
And I look back at even the newspaper that my parents did, that little rag. It started out, I think, in the very beginning as Mimeo.
Oh.
Right, way back when.
The purple
and
stuff.
all different colors and stuff.
Oh gosh, it was
and
brutal.
and then it went to offset printing, and then it went to newsprint because it was growing faster than those other formats could handle. And I think that's the way to look at it. This is not the death, it's a transition. It's a transformation to a new format. But the content, the need for information about what's happening locally and in the world is, I think, even more urgent than it's ever been.
Mm-hmm. Oh, there's no doubt.
Unfortunately, because the new formats are not, let's try to be here nice, are not as tied to veracity. Accountability and checking is not always as good on the new formats because of the immediacy, because they're so quickly available that if somebody slides something in or some weird video, it's harder to parse it out. And the things on the internet live forever. They really, really do. I was interviewed recently for an article, and the reporter went back through other things that are about me on the internet, and I've been an internet presence for enough years that there's a ton of stuff out there. So, yes, I was a pilot, as you mentioned. I guess you're always a pilot, but I'm not actively flying now. I can't stay current. I don't have the time or the money to do it. So that's not happening, but it's there, and I understand parts of it. That's changed, too.
Mm-hmm.
Today's pilots think that we were flying blind when I learned to fly, because we didn't have the network of satellites to tell you exactly where you're at. And people got lost because of that. There were times that I flew that I was off radar, that the only way that center knew where I was by my reports in of where I was, and they moved the little blip according to what I said.
I'm still fascinated with that Bermuda Triangle to see if that's real.
Well, you notice we're not hearing much about it anymore because we've got better communication.
GPS.
GPS. We've got better weather. It wasn't too long ago. Trying to think of which hurricane it was. The one that skirted just to the east of the coast. Somebody I know remembers the name of it. But it didn't come. It was supposed to hit right around Port St. Lucie, but it didn't. It took a little jog and went out. And I was standing there, and I was thinking it was a beautiful sunny day. And if we didn't have radar to tell us that there was a hurricane 50 miles offshore, we wouldn't know it. And if you went out in a small airplane, went flying out into it, weren't paying attention for a few minutes, boom, you're in it.
Yeah.
And then you disappear. So that's the Bermuda Triangle. It's all of these hurricanes, fish storms, etc., that come up through that area on what appears to be a beautiful sunny day. But it's not when you get into the mess. And I think that, and I think of that squadron, that they could hear them talking and knew that they were lost. And they just ran out of gas and couldn't find their way back to land. That doesn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They know where they are because of radar, because of satellites. And it's just, you don't get as lost. And they would have gotten vectored in. Or worst case scenario, somebody would have sent somebody out to go flag them and bring them in. If, for example, their radios went out and they couldn't hear back.
You hear so much about the news when airplane goes down or something. But you think about the amount of miles traveled by passenger airplanes.
Oh, yeah.
Versus one crash, say, in every 10 years or something.
Well,
it's got to be almost billions of miles of safe flying.
You're actually safer flying than you are going on the highway.
I'm sure. I'm not surprised.
7 to 10 times safer.
Yeah.
It's significant. It's real. But part of that is because aviation, by its very nature, has a thin margin of error, a thin safety margin. And because of that, people do extra care. Right? Planes don't come anywhere near as close to each other as cars do on 95.
Oh, well, yeah, exactly.
And a near miss is anything less than a mile. Think about that the next time you're on the road. And that's
100 feet.
Yeah, if you're lucky. And I see that. I see people tailgating all the time. And there's no way that you can respond. That I've got really good reflexes, and I know that I can't respond that fast. And we see that all the time. People just obliterating, or you see them cutting in front of a truck. The truck drivers, I will give it, they've got to have nerves of steel with the things that cars do to them. The people who cut right in front of them. And if there's ever an accident, they're going to get creamed. Because there's just not reaction time. We don't think about that. We don't think that we're ever going to be the one in the problem. And I've been in the 15 car. I've been the car that managed to stop safely, but the cars behind me didn't.
Oh, yeah.
That was a 15 car pileup.
Oh gosh.
And
what was the weather like?
icy. It had been raining, and it had just gone to ice, and we were coming down a hill. And as I said, we stopped the car, and the cars behind. I think the car behind me stopped okay, but I think the one behind them didn't, and after that there was no traction. So there was just a ton of cars, and we went from being in the middle of the intersection where I'd stopped to being off the road, pushed by other cars.
Was this in Pittsburgh or Ohio?
Yes, it was actually in Pittsburgh.
Well, and you have like big time hills in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
Oh.
And this wasn't even that bad a hill, but it was just the perfect storm, as they say. It had been raining. It was in the 30s, and it just hit the place where it turned to ice, and it was a nice smooth road, and boom, when ice forms, if you've ever watched it form, it goes quickly. It forms quickly and it melts quickly. So then that's why people get trapped out on the lakes. One of the things that I did as a pilot in Ohio was one of the times when one of the ice floes broke loose, and it had all kinds of fishing equipment and ATVs on it.
Oh no!
And I flew the TV station reporter out onto the lake to take a picture of this flow and all the equipment that was on there.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Life is interesting.
Yeah.
And people do that still. They still go out onto the ice, and they're surprised when it breaks loose. But
ice fishermen. Yeah.
Yeah. And on the same time, there are tons and tons of people who do that safely over and over and over again. But if you're the unlucky person, if you go out when it's just a little bit too warm, it can break loose. And does. I guess there's better ways of testing the ice now, so we hear less of those. But yeah, it's not so much that we didn't need the helmets and all of the safety equipment. So those of us who survived those things were lucky. And luck is a powerful thing. It can be good or bad.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
And it will shape lives. So yeah. All right, it's as good a time as any to start mentioning, my gosh, the High Holy Day season is around the corner. Rosh Hashanah is in September, mid-September. I guess we'll start talking more about that starting next week. But we'll be looking at getting that up on the website so people can register for the High Holy Day season with us. Really looking forward to that. It's you turn around. I swear it was January yesterday.
Oh, I know. This year has just flown by. And
I was talking with somebody about the crazy things we did during the height of COVID. And in some ways it feels like that's a million years ago, and in other ways it feels like it's yesterday. And things are different today. We have not recovered from COVID. And it makes me wonder how long it really took to recover from the Spanish flu in the 1900s, when they didn't even have the resiliency that we have today. And I have a feeling that that has a lot to do with the Roaring '20s. And I wonder if people are going to look back at these 2020s and say that we're roaring in our own way.
Wow.
Yeah, I think
1920s and 2020s.
Yeah, I think, yeah.
That's weird. Yeah.
Well, the two plagues are about 100 years apart.
Yeah, they are.
Almost. It's 99. It's close enough. And, yeah. And we know that the Spanish flu had profound effects on many, many things. And COVID has had its mark. And we'll see. We'll see what happens. Things are different. It certainly leapfrogged remote working, telecommuting, those kinds of things. And I think that it led to improvements in things like what we're doing now. I sit here and I look around the studio, and we've talked about this other times, right? The cameras are smaller than my cell phone was when I first got one. And I look around the studio, and there's a mix of new and old equipment.
We still have the larger ones, yeah.
Yeah. They're hidden away somewhere. I've got an old Sony, one that's probably 18 inches long. When the TV station, when Access Tucson sold off their old cartridge.
Oh gosh.
Cartridge cameras. We have 2 of those.
Okay.
And I think my husband cannibalized one to keep one working, because they did break down a lot. And yeah, loading that onto a I've got a big terabyte hard drive that's got just a ton of video that never did get edited. Someday I'll get to it, maybe. Haha. It's a good thought. Yeah.
When you're not in school.
When I'm not in school. So it's been a great week, and I hope that everybody else has a great week. We have Friday night services at 7:30 p.m. at 295 Northwest Prima Vista Boulevard, right at the corner of Irving, in the St. Andrews Community Church. And a big thank you to St. Andrews for sharing space with us so that we can have our services there Friday night at 7:30.
Nice. All right. Have a good week.
You too. Take care. This is Rabbi Shafir Lobb for Congregation Eitz Chayim, your Jewish home on the Treasure Coast.
You've been listening to Ask a Rabbi right here on WPSL, Port St. Lucie, talking the Treasure Coast.